Would like to call to order the April 3rd, 2017 work session meeting of the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners. Welcome, everyone. Please remember to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the work session agenda, including the changes which you all have on a separate sheet. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we will go to number 4, discussion items for action at our April 18th meeting. And we are happy to have Debbie Brannon here to talk with us about the website redesign contract.
Good afternoon. If you'll recall, last month I came and did a presentation on the process of our website redesign, and I'm happy to say that we have selected a vendor, and I left a little "Government is Beautiful" sticker for each one of you. That is the branding tagline of the vendor that we chose, Seamless Docs, and they really believe that government is beautiful, and they're going to help us make our government experience beautiful for our customers and for our employees. So you will hear that tagline a lot, I'm sure, as we're working with them in their presentation. They mention beautiful government a lot, and they really believe in it. So we're looking forward to working with them and creating a seamless interaction with our customers through our website. As you can see, we had budgeted $500,000 over 2 years in the CIP, and I'm happy to say that this proposal came in at $56,750 per year for a total of $283,750 for a 5-year contract. So that gives us quite a bit of savings of over $216,000. $216,000. So we're excited about that. The proposal also includes a form solution, so you're going to see some changes on our website with interactions with our customers and improving how people fill out forms and interact with our departments with electronic signatures and some workflow. So we bring this contract to you for approval and request that you suspend your rules tonight and vote on the contract so we can move forward. This is very intricate with the project that we're doing with our branding and our new logo design with communications and outreach, so we want to keep the project moving.
Okay, questions for Ms. Brannon?
Can you just confirm the timeline of this?
We will be within 6 months. I mean, it is a pretty fairly quick timeline, and again, it hinges on the branding contract, and I think that's right along the same line with the branding and the logo. I would like to have it done sooner, but I think 6 months is a good estimate.
Debbie, that's that good news I was telling you about earlier. You didn't figure it out, did you? But anyway, I appreciate all you're doing on this to save us some money. I'm sure Pam's got a good place for it since she's trying to find money for this and that. And unless there's other discussion, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we suspend our rules of procedure so we can vote on this tonight.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. And we would now entertain a motion to approve the contract. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the website redesign contract. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Thank you very much.
And I will be amazed to see it up and running in 6 months.
Well, we look forward to presenting it to you before then.
That's what I always say to Kyle, and he takes it as a challenge and does it quicker. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda are discussion items In number 3, and first we have a federal grants update from Kelly Sifford and Ben Rose.
Good afternoon. Wanted to touch base with you about the federal grants. In the President's budget, we have some numbers that are moving around and not sure where we're going to land. So I'll start with mine and then let Ben take over. As far as CDBG, we didn't have any of that money right now anyway, but it has been eliminated in the proposed budget. The home program has also been eliminated in the budget, but we weren't planning on taking any money this year from that either, so those weren't the impact this year. The weatherization program is a combination of actual DOE money for weatherization and LIHEAP, or LEAP as they call it, funding. Both of those programs have been eliminated in his proposed budget, which also includes the heating and air repair and replacement program that is also LEAP funding. The Housing and Home Improvement Program Community Care Block Grant is a combination of federal and state funds. The Older Americans Act is where most of that funding comes from. It was not really clear on that one where that one stood. We haven't seen anything specific on it yet. So those are the ones that we have potential budget issues with. The National Flood Insurance Program is also impacted, but it's looking like more like restructuring and passing along costs to the citizens who use it more than it being subsidized by the average taxpayer. But it didn't go into strong detail on that either. And there's only approximately 160 people in the non-incorporated area that would be potentially affected. The Federal Emergency Management Agency that eliminated some unspecified programming and the pre-disaster mitigation program and is requiring a 25% match on some of the programs, which is more what Stephen usually handles, but since it was kind of in the grand scheme of the discussion, I went ahead and brought that to you. We are hearing from the weatherization people that they are expecting a minimum of 60% of the DOE money. That is not where the bulk of our money is, but obviously we won't know anything until everything falls out on that. On the good side, I did get a call earlier today that the Duke program, they are changing it, the reimbursement program that we've been using, to create more of a standalone program. I don't know a lot of details about it yet, but I think that it would be something that we could carry on weatherization work under it, and it being privately funded. It would be kind of a little smaller and not as kind of a holistic program. It would only be available to Duke customers, but we do have quite a few Duke customers in Cabarrus County, so that would be something that we had already talked about exploring if Duke offered money, so we'll continue exploring that. Like I said, I just found out about that a couple hours ago. So do you have any questions of?
Got all that?
And I have the actual document. If you're interested in seeing it, I can send it to you, and I have page numbers for the various parts. If you're interested in seeing that as well, I'll be happy to send that out.
I was just going to make a quick comment that, I mean, it's a blueprint, so we have to pay attention to it. But boy, this thing's going to change a lot, and they've got a deadline hanging over their heads
Absolutely.
in a month of, so there's going to be a lot of action in the next 30 days on the federal budget. So
Certainly.
we'll just see how it checks out.
And part of that's why we wanted to discuss it with you is certainly, it doesn't necessarily match our budget process, but it's just things we wanted you to know we're keeping track of as we go through our budget process. And Pam will tell you that with Kelly's budget, we're oftentimes, as we're getting towards the end, hearing what kind of money we're going to get through each of these programs, but there's usually an expense and a revenue that offset each other. So just things, these are all things that we're just alerted to and we're tracking as we go through our budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anything towards the end, if any programs are gonna be impacted, whether it's financially or for services, we wanna make sure you know financially, if you wanna continue to include it or add local money to it, but also if it's services, because you're the one that's gonna get the phone calls if a program stops, and that's why, so.
And every year for at least the past 5 years, we've had to budget based on the previous year's numbers because they have come out so late every year. So right now, we're budgeting with last year's numbers.
Any other questions? Okay. you're
My
on,
turn.
Ben.
Well, let me paint a rosier picture, right? We're used to, in DHS, having a target on our backs for our budget, so there are definitely some things to be watching for. Wanted to give you a couple of little starting points, though, to help understand the DSS budget a little bit. One thing is that the state gets over $4 billion, and that's 4 with a B, and for health and human services programs in North Carolina. And that does include Medicaid and food and nutrition programs, the benefits that are paid. Medicaid is, for this state, is well over $282 million that is paid out in benefits for the Medicaid program. So that kind of gives you a feel for the scope of the federal dollars that we do get. And amazingly, the state, and when it comes to DHS, contributes very little for the administration of these programs, even though they supervise and oversee the programs, and we actually answer to them from that standpoint. They provide about 2 to 3% of the funding for the administration of those programs. So when you look at our operational budget, if you look at the budget that you'll be looking at, about 57% of it is federal with a little bit of state in there, and about 43% of it is county. That number has risen quite a bit over the years because what's happening is we have 5 major service areas, major divisions that we work with. 3 of those divisions, the funding is capped or it's grants. It's not open-ended. We have 2 economic services, the Medicaid and food and nutrition eligibility. That's open-ended funding. So if we added 100 staff today, we could get reimbursement on them. But when you talk about the service areas such as child welfare and adult welfare, the social workers, and then in Bob's area on the transportation, that is pure grant funding. And those programs are kind of flat. So you've gotten a bigger county match over the years because the service has grown, but the grant has not grown. So and they are mandated services. So that's part of the challenge that we see with our budget is we've started to see more and more county dollars come into play for our budget. A couple of things to note, as Kelly did mention, the LEAP program, a low-income energy assistance program. We're estimated to receive about $491,000 in that program this year. That is in the president's budget to be eliminated. This program basically provides assistance for elderly, disabled, and families for energy assistance, typically paid out in the spring. We do about a 4-month eligibility period with it. We served over 1,600 households this year so far, so it does make an impact. We spent a little under our allocation this year. We did not quite see the applications this year. I think some of that is reflective of the economy, actually, that the economy is doing a lot better and people are not qualifying as much. But that program is in the president's budget to be eliminated. The other program that is not directly impacts our department, but could have an indirect impact is the Community Service Block Grants, which is the community, Rowan Cabarrus Community Action Agency that comes here and presents to you once a year. Their funding is actually proposed to be eliminated. And what that would do if that funding is eliminated is we serve mutual clients, so it might actually bring people back onto our rolls potentially. So that could be an impact from that as well too. Otherwise, the president's budget, the cuts are in a lot of different areas, especially in the health-related field. So you might want to hear from the health department as well too. A couple of things I think to look for, though, based on some historical patterns and some concerns coming forward. One would be our social services block grant. We receive about $303,000 in federal funding, which is called the Social Services Block Grant. It has a 25% county match. Sadly, we're matching it at a much higher level than that. We probably match it at more about 60%. This is the only funding stream that we really have that's consistent for us to provide adult protective services, guardianship services, and anything in the adult area. You can actually provide child welfare services under it, but we use it for our adult services area, Kathy Mauer's old area, Anthony Hodges' new area. That was actually proposed in 2015 to be eliminated by Congress, but it was not able to work its way up because they ended up doing a continuing resolution. I feel like that might be back on the table this year. If we lose that, that's a major funding source to our department for what we do. And again, that grant covers completely mandated services. So it's not like we can cut the service. We have to provide the service, but it would shift cost back to the county. So that is one to keep an eye on. Another one is healthcare reform. Even though it kind of died a couple of weeks ago, it's still out there. And part of the healthcare reform, of course, is involving block granting Medicaid. If they block grant Medicaid, that will drastically change the way we get reimbursed. We would be looking at basically now, we get a 75% open-ended reimbursement when we do that function. It would be now a capped allocation that we would probably get if it is block granted. So that could have tremendous impacts if they do end up getting that route. So that's something to again, to keep an eye on. TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, that is a block grant program. That's the old cash assistance or aid to families with dependent children. It was block granted back in 1996 when they did welfare reform. This program provides, we get over $82 million in the state of North Carolina in TANF funding that helps us provide workforce services and child protective services. That is always on the chopping block as well, too, to be reduced, just like the social services block grant. The other one to keep an eye on, too, as well, is the child care program. Right now, there's no indication that child care subsidies will be reduced, but I think once Congress gets going, that could be something that's on the table. Department of Transportation, the President's budget does cut $2.4 billion from Department of Transportation. We have not seen any impact quite yet to CCTS. A lot of that is dealing with the rail systems and things like that. But that we still would have to keep an eye on that as well, too, because Bob and CCTS, they get some federal funding as well, too. So those are things we're keeping an eye on. Any questions on that?
And to add to that, the library system, the LSTA grant, that's about $200,000, is also up for elimination from the President's budget, and it's just a revenue that helps support the library system.
So, a lot of these cuts on that side are either going to result in additional expense for us or significant reduction in service.
Correct.
Which, for the library as an example, I'm not sure exactly how that would filter down, but it's going to be challenging.
That's why we want to make sure that you're aware of this, what we're going to show you, the updated numbers we have from our retreat. We have updated numbers, but then we're also having to watch what's going on in the federal government because they may be still impacted between now and the end of May when we come back to you and show you. So again, today is going to be sort of a snapshot in time again as to where we are now after we've met with all the departments, but we're still waiting. There's still other outlying areas that can be impacting our budget positively or negatively. So you'll hear. So we want to make sure you're aware of those because some of those are services that you enjoy providing and that our citizens really need. So.
Okay, additional questions for Ben or Kelly? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll all stay tuned. Okay, next is update on the fiscal year 2018 budget process.
Well, we're going to have Susan and Kristen come up and Pam, just to give you a real quick update. We have met with all of the departments now and gone through their request for whether it's employees, whether it's additional or enhanced services, whether it is vehicles, whether it's additional equipment, furniture, whatever. We've gone through all of those, they had the opportunity to defend their request, and then we also have looked at the numbers and had to make some of those requests while they were valid. They didn't make this level of the budget, and that's what Kristen is going to present to you now, and then we can talk some more after she presents to us. So, go ahead, Kristen and Susan.
Actually, yeah, I think Susan's going to start.
Susan's going to start,
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine.
During the budget process, meeting with the departments, there was some one-time expenditures that were noted that departments had asked for 18. And we had some additional funds to come in, our Medicaid hold harmless money. It came in higher than what we budgeted. So you had a list in your agenda package, I believe it was on page 59 in your agenda packet, that had some of the items that were requested, were one-time expenditures, some things that we can go ahead and knock out now with our extra Medicaid hold harmless. And the Medicaid hold harmless money was, if you remember, Article 42 of our sales tax, 44 was taken away from us. And in exchange, the state would pay for our Medicaid payments. And then after they paid for, they would keep us whole, what we originally received in Article 44, and then any extra excess money would come back to us. Well, as our sales tax increases, which it has been over the past couple of years, we're getting more Medicaid hold harmless money in. So therefore, this year, we had an additional $1.4 million come in over what we had expected. So that's where the money came from to be able to help fund some of these one-time projects. Some of the projects listed here, just noteworthy, or some of the more notable ones was for the network upgrades for different locations at the county. And we had the dump truck down below for IMS department, and the land for the new PLC. We want to allocate money for that purchase, and also a landfill retaining wall for some of the larger item purchases there.
Yeah, these were projects that were included in the requested budgets for next year. But with the cash available now, we can pull those out of next year's budget, pay for them now if you approve, and therefore we were able to cut the proposed budget down by that amount. Some of those, the sheriff's arbitrator, the platform, that's all of the technology that goes into their cars, their patrol cars. There are 15 new cars approved in next year's budget through us, or we've approved to purchase as they continue to churn and replace their vehicles. This is all the technology that goes into those vehicles. We pulled that out of next year's budget and hoping to be able to go ahead and purchase that ahead of time. Again.
What's the next line item, that ITS mode?
That's
not a very big number, but I don't know what that is.
By tech.
Tax administration system for our tax assessors to go out into the field and use tablets. But these items on the list, like they said, they are one-time items, but they are not items that cause any long-term effect to our budget. There were things in there that are reoccurring that we did not remove from the budget. We only removed stuff that was like every 3 or 4 years that we might buy, so it would not be harmful to next year's budget.
Okay. Any other questions about that? There's also a budget amendment in your agenda that will make this happen in our budget. But also, when we're going through getting ready to finish up 17, there were 2 more items that we were going to, that we came across for our capital reserve funding. And so at this time, we'd like to make a request for some additional capital reserve money that we can set aside for the funding, another $110,600 for a warehouse purchase shortfall, when we anticipated the amount we're going to borrow for the debt service and just the original budget. We needed about $110,600 for our purchase, and then another $30,664 in our to set aside for a contingency for the warehouse, because we're going to be upfitting the warehouse to make it usable from the condition it's in now. So, and also in the capital reserve request, it's a budget amendment. I don't have like a listing, but it's at the top of the budget amendment. The next one, that one. It's at the top. I'm just recanting what's up there. But the second part of this budget amendment will also provide an additional $640,554 for the purchase of land for a new elementary school. This will also be added to our land banking balance that we have of $517,000 to be able to give us enough money to hopefully purchase a piece of land for a new elementary school we want to build in the future. So these funds are in our capital reserve fund, but I have to come before you to be able to use that capital reserve money. So what this budget amendment will do, and the previous one, it allocates the money to the specific funds so that the money can be spent properly and tracked properly. And also, at your April 18th meeting, you will have 5 different project ordinances to update to make this happen. Because it's affecting many different funds, 5 different funds, to be able to do these 2 budget amendments. Do these raise any questions at this time?
These are separate from the first list.
Yes, these are separate.
This is totally different.
This is not using the Medicaid hold harmless. This is coming out of our capital reserve funding. And this will allow the projects to proceed.
And you're
as
also
needed.
moving that $2 million over on the,
Yes. And the very first line item there, we are going to we have been tracking the warehouse in the 343 fund, which is our construction and renovation fund, which is where we pay cash for our projects. And I'm moving the $2 million for tracking purposes over to our debt fund, which is now where we're going to borrow money for the warehouse. If you'll remember at your retreat, we decided to, instead of paying cash for the warehouse, we would change that into a debt financing and group it with the other 3 projects, freeing up money for some school buses and other school needs. So that's where the $2 million, we originally thought we were going to use the 343 fund, and now I'm transferring it to the 369 fund, which is a debt fund, and for better tracking, so we can keep everything together.
The land bank funds currently are 517, so we're gonna put 640 in, and then we're just holding it while we shop. I mean, that sounds obvious, but I just want to
Yes.
make sure I'm following.
Those 2 will be added together, and they equal 1.157,
Okay.
and that'll be available for the purchase. Right now, we're thinking that we're going to
Of
buy
raw
some.
property for a new elementary school,
Yes.
wherever it may be.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that will, like I said, we tried to set aside some money for some land banking, and now that land banking money, we've already paid for the high school land out of it, and that's why it brought us down to the balance, the $17,000 balance. So that money will be gone after this
Yeah,
purchase.
and we'll be talking to you again a little bit later on for land banking purposes and what we're proposing as well. So.
Second, because you just said that money will be gone.
Yes.
Once we spend it.
Yeah, well,
Right.
that part I got.
Yeah.
But what are we spending it on?
That would be the next elementary school.
Okay, well, I'm
Elementary
sorry, well, then I really did fuzz out, because that's what I thought, and then I thought I heard you say that something else was going on, and we were gonna use that and then replace it with something else, but
No, I may be
we're
giving too
just
much
ho-
information.
we're
Yeah.
just holding it while we shop.
the land banking was somewhere around $5 million, and we bought the high school
Right.
site that left over 517.
Right,
I think that's where
okay.
she was leading you.
Okay.
She's giving you
Well,
she was giving you a history
A little bit
lesson.
more
I got
history
you.
probably than.
Maybe I should have kept listening.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
And it does get a little bit cumbersome when we have cash funds and we're paying for things, which is great. But then when we need to transfer all of our, those funds into a capital projects fund that issues debt, because we have to keep our debt funds separate from our cash funds, and we can move the cash funds into the debt fund, but we can't go backwards. So sort of, it's mainly for tracking, but I did want to point out that we did have that money set aside for land banking, and we've used it, which will be the second use for the money that we had set aside. So, to proceed on with this, I mean, if y'all have questions or anything, please let me know. But what this will look like on your agenda for the April 18th will be 2 budget amendments and 5 project ordinances to move the funds around and get them to the proper place for tracking, use the capital reserve funding that we just spoke about in this budget amendment, and use the one-time money for Medicaid hold harmless, if approved.
Okay, so those are not the agenda items down below that are under finance. These are new.
No.
So those will show up. They're under no action, but they are actually action.
Correct.
So there'll be some additional items show up. Megan, you catching that? Okay. All right.
The previous list of projects, is that in any sort and order, or was that just, I mean, they're not in any
The
level of
one-time
importance, or?
projects.
The Medicaid hold harmless,
Yes.
as we were going down the budget and when we could eliminate something, they just got added to the list.
Okay, so, okay.
Just an
That's
accumulation
fine.
of.
I mean, I can't think of why it would be beneficial to have it prioritized. I just wanted to ask the question.
Right.
So, okay.
Okay, is there any more questions on those two budget amendments or movement of funds. Okay, well, if they're later on, just let me know if you come up with some questions. Okay, so we'll switch to the 5-year plan.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I have provided a good number of handouts. They're going to be your large sets of paper. And so just briefly going over what I have provided you with. The first 5-year plan is what was presented at the retreat. The second 5-year plan in your packet is what we are proposing currently for the FY18 budget. And then there's a third 5-year plan, which I'll go over, that is proposing budgeting money for deferred maintenance with some CIP projects, capital improvement projects listed by the county and schools following those 5-year plans. So to start with the 5-year plan, the retreat version, again, this is what we presented at the retreat. And just to give you some brief context, because that was a while ago, that starting number, which is the amended budget less one-time revenues, that's our revised budget less any one-time revenues and expenditures that we're throwing our budget off that aren't reoccurring. And then we adjusted at the retreat. We didn't have many expenditures showing up because we were still very early in the budget process at that time. So you're showing a surplus of 1.1 million, which you see right there. But as we start to go through the second 5-year plan, you'll see where we're starting to add in personnel requests and where that budget surplus is now showing as a shortfall of 200,000. So if you will flip to your second 5-year plan, that's the proposed for FY18. So Susan will walk you through the increases that we've seen in property taxes and sales taxes, and I'll walk you through the major permits and fees category and also the other category.
Okay. From so for the for the tax evaluation, back at the retreat time, we had an increase of 5.6 million, and now we're showing 6.2 million. So each month, as the numbers are revised, they're given to me by the tax assessor's office, and then I'm able to use the new assessed values and put them through at the 70% tax rate and our collection rate that we used at 6/30 of 16, and come up with a new levy projection amount. So now it looks like we're going to be about 4.8%. For 18, whereas at the retreat time we were 4.3%. So this the levy increase is $617,000 increase from the time of the retreat until now. So questions on the property?
Susan, on the tax collection rate, what is that rate?
It is. I've got it here. Wish I could.
97, 98, something?
It's 98% on the. My eyes are failing me. 98.02%.
98.02. And that's, I think,
almost 100% on the DMV because, the new
right,
tax
because of
tag.
the right.
Yes.
Well, I was thinking that even the 98.2 was a little bit better than it was in years past.
It was, yes.
And that's good.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Also, our sales tax increased from the last time that you've seen this. Before we had 1.6, now we're at 3.4. It continues to come in really good. We're at like 6% over our previous fiscal year amounts. However, when you're looking at the budget, we're like 7.8% above what we projected for the budget. So for 18, we're projecting a 7.8% increase, and then the other growth in sales tax for 2% for the years out. We have not had any major refunds hit us this year, so when I'm doing my estimates for sales tax, I do take into consideration what's the average been for the past 6 years on our refunds, and I do incorporate and reduce our amount for my sales tax projection because I don't want to be hit with a surprise. Next we have like 5 months to go because our sales tax is behind 2 months, so we've got about 5 months to collect. So trying to take that in consideration, so I don't want to overestimate our sales tax because it is huge. So that was the increase from the retreat until now. Questions on sales tax?
So going down to the permits and fees category, when I presented at the retreat, we had about 6 months of data to project off of. Now we have 9 months of data. So I did, in meeting with the assistant finance director, I did adjust 2 of the revenue sources from when I presented at the retreat. which were an increase in ambulance fees of $231,000, which you're seeing in that first column under 2018, and then Register of Deeds fees, an increase of $439,000. We did look at building inspections again with 9 months of data and decided to leave that at what we recommended at the retreat, which was $395,000, an increase of $395,000. Any questions on the permits and fees category? So moving down to the revenues, you can see we have our other category, which is just where we're showing any increases from the FY17 budget to what we're proposing for FY18's budget. So the first item there, we're proposing an increase of $220,000 in our interest and investments. The next item is $174,000 in our state misdemeanor confinement program fees, which is currently in our jail budget, and that's due to an increase in beds from 60 to 90. That should level out. I talked with some folks over at the Sheriff's Department, but they felt comfortable with that estimate. And like Susan said, with the Medicaid hold harmless, us getting additional revenue in this year, we've decided to increase the budget for next year from originally, I believe, we had budgeted $125,000, and we bumped that to $1 million. So that's what that increase in $875,000 is. And then the increase and decrease, in this case, a decrease in revenues, is just due a lot to our DHS departments and state funding estimates and grant funding coming in below what was projected at FY17's budget amount. So you're seeing right now we are proposing our revenues to come in right at $246 million.
Kristen, on
Yes.
the, this last one here, the increase, decrease in other revenues, is that primarily pertaining to the president's proposed budget with his cuts that Kelly talked to about earlier?
No,
Does
it's-
that not tie in some way, what we
No.
anticipate?
It's just based on state funding estimates that the departments entered at the time. So that is subject to change, but I know in particular in the daycare funding, that was where we saw a significant decrease from last year's budget. So moving on to expenditures, as you can see on the retreat, of course, we hadn't heard from our departments. So we have heard from our departments, and like Mike said, we have vetted out the personnel position request, and so that 1.7 you're seeing right there includes 36 new positions and 12 reclassifications across all of our departments. Some of the major departments are DHS, our Parks Department, Planning and Zoning, Construction Standards in particular. And that does include benefits, and the COLA is calculated into that 1.7 number.
And for the DHS, of course, the volume continues to increase on top of workloads that were already recommended. And also for the parks, remember we opened up Rob Wallace Park with a very small staff out there now, and as we need to add some more to maintain that park. And then, of course, with planning and zoning, as the permits continue to go, we've got a couple of positions in there so that we can go ahead and bring in more inspectors. However, if the volume doesn't change and the need's not there, we won't pull those in. So they won't start immediately. Those will be holding spaces somewhere during the year in case the volumes pick up, so that we can go ahead and meet those needs.
So is it safe to say that if you do fill those positions in inspections, for example, then there would be also an increase in revenue that would counteract
Some of those
that?
revenues are already being projected here, but yeah, there would probably be
Yeah.
even more. Yeah.
And the same thing with DHS. I mean, are some of those positions one that we're reimbursed at 75%?
They are reimbursed, however, there is a cap on the reimbursement, a total cap. So while they are reimbursed, the percentage for all of those positions may be less reimbursed. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
There is a maximum, so There is a maximum that you're allowed for reimbursement total. So, yeah, they are reimbursed, but it's it would just spread out that current reimbursement
So
to more
rather than
positions
75%, it might be 73% or,
across
that-
the board.
yeah.
So like in our child welfare division, we meet the cap. So
Uh-huh.
even if you add people, you might get 75% or 50% in the first 3 months, but you're gonna hit your cap quicker.
Right.
So you've exceeded the amount of money that they give you. So you reach a point in time when you have a cap on those revenues that no matter how many positions you add, you don't get any more revenue.
And so we pay 100% of those additional positions.
For the
Correct.
remainder of the year.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
Moving on, you do see the salary study listed under the county services for expenditures at $450,000. And I believe this is still subject to change, but it encompasses our infrastructure and asset management departments and DHS. The merit and COLA were included on the 5-year plan at the retreat. I did lower the merit because we had budgeted, I think we proposed to budget around $800,000 at the retreat. And due to employees not all getting their evaluations at the start of the year, we felt like we could lower that budgeted amount to the $500,000 that you're seeing. And then the health insurance increase line, where you're seeing $323,000, is just an increase in our retiree health insurance. Are there any questions on some of the expenditures we highlighted there?
How long has it been since a salary study was done?
Per policy, we do them every 2 years. However, what we've done is we've broken, instead of doing every single employee or every single position every 2 years. Is Lundy back there?
I am.
Lundy, you want to come up and talk? That way, if I tell you something wrong, she can.
Well, Kristen mentioned that it was specific to, it sounded like a couple different
was,
departments, but
yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was hearing that correctly.
So rather than having every other year a very large expense, looking at every position, we've broken it down into 3 sections that are roughly equivalent. Public safety, like kind of a miscellaneous other, and DHS. So this is DHS's first survey literally since I've been here. So I think it's 6 or 7 years that they haven't been looked at. So this will be their first time around. We did look at IM about 3 years ago, so they're on their 3-year cycle, but this will kind of conclude the last group at the first 3-year, and then we'd be back to public safety again for the cycle starting 18.
Yeah, we used to do every single position, and if you took the recommendations, it was a very large number, so we're trying to break it down so it's not such a large impact into the budgets.
On the debt sections next, since the retreat, we have added the Wallace Park land, so that's an additional $49,000 a year. And then we also have added the debt for the warehouse that was recently approved. And our PLC debt we've taken from 5 years to 7 years and changed some of the numbers. So the increase from the retreat is $434,000 to our debt service numbers there. Okay, and just to inform you, we're still looking at all the debt numbers. For right now, we have our high school with being $57 million. And we do know that a high school in South Carolina recently was higher than that. And so what I've proposed is to go out to our underwriter today and increase our high school amount to $100 million. I know that's a huge jump, but the one, South Carolina came in at $80 million. That was a year ago. So what we have to do, and that'll be later on your agenda tonight to talk about it, but when I come to you and ask for the permission to issue debt, the installment financing, we have to do a not-to-exceed number. And so I would hate to come under and then have to come back to you again and start the whole process again, because there's a debt process, and each month I'll come to you and say, this is the next step in the debt issue, this is the next step in the debt issue. So we'd hate to start from beginning and go forward. So hopefully between now and April 18th meeting, I will have the documents that will be updated for this in your agenda packet tonight to reflect the $100 million number for that by no means, we will not issue debt for any more than we have to. But at this point, just, we need to go ahead, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in more detail. But just knowing that if we have to issue debt for more than what we originally said, these numbers are going to change.
And it will come back to you. The 100 million for the not to exceed, you'll vote. And then when it comes back to make the final decision, you will make that decision as well. So it's not like you're going to give us up to 100 million and we can go out and do 99 million. All of those votes will come back to you to approve prior to whatever that actual amount is.
Just a quick question. I know these numbers are right because I think I'm familiar with what the two came in. They were close, but these two numbers for the Performance Learning Center and the warehouse, they're the exact numbers, but that's because they're both right in that same.
They're right at $4 million
That's what I thought.
apiece,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's what's happening. I
Yes.
thought it was, but I just wanted to check.
No, that's fine. No, they're both they're $4 million projects, and so the debt service should be right in line. Just to give you an idea, just ran some quick numbers for our our bond underwriter. If we went out to the $100 million, based on the information we have now, that's going to increase our debt service anywhere from $3.1 million to $4.2 million, in addition to what's on this sheet that you're seeing here. So any increases in our project costs could add, that's annually, another $3 million to $4 million in debt service. So there's just some reality that, I don't want to surprise you later on. I would rather tell you up front now. So our bond documents will be a not-to-exceed amount for $100 million for the high school, and then the other three projects will be listed also for cumulative amount, and we'll go over that, like I said, a little bit later in the agenda. But as of right now, our debt service numbers on the 5-year plan reflect the high school being at the $57 million number that we originally had planned on.
Susan, if we were to like you mentioned, if we were to have the debt approved for a lower number and have to go back, that's a pretty expensive process, isn't it?
It is, and it is timely, too. I know we're under a time crunch, but based on our conversations with the schools, it takes about two years to build a high school. And if we had to start the whole process again, it could delay construction beginning for a couple months, and we don't really want to do that because it's hard to open a school mid-year. So to keep on track, in fact, we have some reimbursement agreements in a little bit later too, so that they can stay on track, because we're going to issue debt a couple months after they need to break ground. So it is a process to go through, and you'll see that our bond attorney show up. He'll show up some of the meetings too to help us along the process. But yes, it will be a delay.
And we incur no additional expense by getting the higher number up front.
Right.
Right, so
We'd
that
rather-
makes a lot of sense.
And that's why we call it not to exceed number.
Right.
Any other questions on that? But like I said, these are the lower numbers that you're seeing right now on the 5-year plan.
The schools section you can see is just the additional funding that we're projecting for current expense from last year's revised budget figures. So 3.8 for Cabarrus County Schools in Kannapolis City, and then 227,000 proposed for RCCC. And moving down to the other expenditure category, you can see in the retreat 5-year plan that we did have $1 million budgeted for land bank funding, and we have decided not to include that so far in this year's budget, just due to the fact that we're already at a deficit of $200,000. We did include in the additional request for the Health Alliance, which is that $412,000, which includes 2 on-site vehicles, a new nurse position with merit and fringe benefits included in that, and then they are proposing an increase in their school nurse health insurance from what's currently at 50% to go to 80%. So that's the increase there that you're seeing from the Health Alliance. Did you want to speak to incentive payments?
And then since the retreat too, we've had some updates on our incentive payments. So before we were taking away $317,000, but they've been updated their report, and we actually need to add to our incentive $110,000. based on the timing of the incentive payments.
And then that increase in expenditures you're seeing at 511,000, the majority of that is for our charter school students, and then some expenses associated with those new positions such as vehicles, but the majority is from the charter schools.
And that money's sitting in contingency, waiting to find out what that number is going to be.
So as you can see, currently right now, the budget's out of balance by 204,000. And we did keep this 5-year plan at the 70-cent tax rate, as you can see, all the way across. So were there any questions?
Kristen, I do have a question.
Sure.
And on the schools, the operational cost that we're looking at there, with the 3.8 for Cabarrus and Kannapolis, and then the 227 for Rowan, that's put us right at $4 million a year. What are we paying? Susan, you may know, I don't know if you know this or not, but what does that bring our total amount now, county-wise, going to operational expense to schools? Because we just met with our local legislature real recently, and this was one of the things that we were talking about. We talked about it in one of our meetings before that, I believe, where that the original agreement was, you know, the state pays operational costs, funds the teachers, and then the county builds the schools and maintains them. And how that has got so far out of balance. And as you see with these numbers, it's getting further and further out of balance.
Right.
Because the state seems to be paying less of what they're supposed to pay, which is putting a bigger burden on the county. And I don't know that most taxpayers really realize that when they think about they should have done this and they should have done that. It's not necessarily the county, and it's not necessarily the state either. But when they take the lottery funds, and now they're talking about the sales tax redistribution and all of those type things that affect revenue coming into Cabarrus County, plus, but those needs not being met as a part of the state's responsibilities, it falls back on us.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just wondering, not only for my own and for the rest of the board's knowledge, but for the community that's watching this as well, how much is Cabarrus County paying for schools now to maintain them, which should be a state responsibility?
I think Pam just went and pulled some numbers too for us.
I hope it ain't,
No,
that's
no,
probably
okay.
off guard,
If I
but
was
you know.
sitting in front of my
if-
computer, I could pull it right
But you can
forward.
imagine, though, if it does this every year,
Right.
and so you notice that there's nothing scheduled for 19, 20, and all them, well, there is a little bit for Rowan, but not for, well, none, for not any of them for the next few years. There's nothing scheduled. But it could be more or less, I guess.
Right.
So I'm going to have to read you a couple of numbers because building and grounds are a responsibility. So for regular instructional, $44,786,856. This is only Cabarrus County. Charter schools, $3,756,719. Technology support, $4,962,162. Kannapolis City Schools, regular instruction, $5,633,279. Charter schools, $640,906. Technology support, $378,078. And Rowan Cabarrus Community College, $2,589,303.
And as a
Current-
percentage of the county budget, that's pushing us up to 45% or better.
And especially when you add in the debt service for school-related buildings and stuff. We could provide a chart with that information. I know y'all were trying to jot it down, if you'd like
Yeah.
us to email that
Well,
right
it would
now.
be nice to have that,
Okay.
because, you know, the questions that I get all the time are, you know, things that are relevant to this. And so if I had some kind of a document or something, it would make it easier to
Yeah, I think that
properly
would
respond.
be helpful.
And we'll
Yeah, I
put the
think
percentage
just on the
too.
local or the current, that was your first category, what makes that up?
Yeah, that's the regular instructional. Now, some of the stuff that's in that, and Kelly Klutz
Kelly's
behind me
here,
could
yeah.
talk to that, but some of that's like utilities and stuff that I think are our responsibility, but
Right.
a lot of that is the salary and benefits of local portion supplements.
And all the supplements too.
But there's all the utility costs and stuff that are in there also. That would have to be dissected, but
And one more thing, and that would probably, could you list the personnel, the number of personnel that we're county funding for schools?
we have that chart we can provide to you.
How many that we have?
Yeah, we have it.
450,
Yeah.
it's probably 450 or better.
Yeah, Ms. Klutz sent it over. We requested a couple weeks, so we'll
Yeah,
get it to
okay.
you. So,
All right.
yeah, look at it.
Okay, can do that.
Were there any other questions on the proposed FY18 budget? So if you will, turn to the third five-year plan. We provided.
One thing real quick, Kristen,
Mhm.
on these numbers here, just wanted to make sure there is 0 in there for land banking. And that doesn't also does not consider the potential of the sales tax redistribution, which could be a potential, if approved as proposed by the state legislature. That's a loss of about 1.3, 1.4 million?
Yeah.
1.5?
1.5,
1.5
right.
million of revenues as well.
The thing that stands out to me, there's nothing in there that advances the courthouse. Unless I'm not,
That's.
There's $1 million on the capital reserve
On the-
request that you'll get at the budget process to continue that process.
For the
progress.
design, yeah.
All right.
Right.
It also doesn't take anything in consideration that Ben Kelly talked about either,
No.
if the president's budget has any effects.
That's correct, yes. And then some other issues that we'll bring up on this scenario, the next scenario that we're going to present to you, so.
Yes, so if you will, look on the third page or the third five-year plan. We kept everything the same. It's the proposed FY18 five-year plan, except we did add in a line under the schools, which you can see highlighted, budgeting $4 million for deferred maintenance, which we are showing that as a recurring expense. So we did want to present you with that information, and if you look in the supplemental pages behind it, page 4 and 5, we've shown a list to start. Page 4 is showing you a summary of all the capital requests by, that's from all county departments, Cabarrus County Schools, Kannapolis City Schools, although we didn't get a breakdown by year, but you see the 21 million there, and then Rowan Cabarrus. And so that first table is showing all of our county department capital projects that we have requested for 18, and then that fit in accordance with the five-year plan going out to FY22. And then page 5 is listing all Cabarrus County projects, and we divided them out between projects that were $25,001 to $499,999, and then projects over $500,000. And so they are all separated out by schools. So you can see the full capital request there, and then on the back you can see RCCC's request by their buildings, and then Kannapolis City by the schools. But again, we don't have them broken out by the years like the other school request. But we wanted to present you with this information showing you all of the capital requests that are out there countywide and school-wide. So
We do have one more sheet to provide to you, the actual construction of new facilities. We can get additional copies of this made, but this was not included.
Is that new schools?
Yeah, new facilities.
Okay. Yeah, and we've had several conversations and discussions between ourselves, but also with the schools over the years about deferred maintenance. And that's what we were trying to look at here. However, in looking at that list of deferred maintenance, we're looking at, we want to narrow that definition down some to life cycles of mechanical systems, to roofs, to things that actually are going to impact those buildings and make them not usable or have an impact on the education process. Some of that large number that we've heard actually are additions, requested additions to schools, new schools, and that kind of stuff. So we want to weed all of that out to make sure it is a true number for deferred maintenance, so that we can get a better number for you. But, so we plugged in 4 million, that could be $1 million, that could be 2 million, it could be 10 million. If the true number was 200 million, and that's a living number because it continues to grow the longer it's deferred. So that's why we're trying to narrow that gap down. What exactly is deferred maintenance? And I guess, Commissioner Kiger, you would know that very well in what in your line of business. So we're trying to figure out what that is, so that if we're pushing out a mechanical system that's past its life cycle, that could die any time, and then we need to fix that if we can. So we're trying to plug a number in that's an appropriate number, that we're actually making a dent in it, or are we just feeding that machine and it's still continuing to grow? So once we get that narrowed list ready for you guys, then we'll know what is an appropriate number to put there. But for the sake of this exercise tonight, we plugged in 4 million. So, and that would be a recurring every year, just as you did two years ago, or last year, we started doing a recurring cost for
Last year,
for smaller
882.
projects. Yeah, so we've got that in there. Yeah, we started at 882. I think we're proposing $1 million flat this year. Is that right? Or
900,000.
okay, we're trying to get to $1 million, but that's what it is. We're trying to come up with a way to meet the needs of the schools, because they got a lot of buildings, they got a lot of structures out there that are starting to age. We've been lucky over the years that we've had new buildings, but there's still some older ones out there, but even the newer buildings are reaching a life cycle of some of their larger systems. So we're going to need to start helping them along with that, or that list is just going to continue to grow. And then we're going to have a few time bombs out there in the middle of the year that are just going to stop. And then we're going to scurry around trying to figure out how to fix those systems or replace them. So, and again, as Kristen said, those numbers you can see, and we're still using the 70-cent tax rate. And in year 18, if we were to propose to begin to fix that deferred maintenance, again, we're using 4 million, we're at a deficit right now, a balance in the budget of 4.2 million.
Of which a penny on our tax rate is
2.1 million.
So we just wanted to give you some good examples of where we are right now. When we first started working on the budget, based on all of the projections, based on all the requests of the departments, Kristen, we started out at about 4 million. At a $4 million deficit, and that didn't include this deferred maintenance or land banking or anything. So we worked very hard, Susan and Kristen and Pam and Jonathan and myself and every one of the department heads have worked pretty hard over the last couple of months, whittling this thing down, and will continue to do so on your direction. But we want to let you know that we did start at a 4 million without any of these additional deferred maintenance programs and some of the other stuff. So any questions? I'd say concerns. I think we're all concerned. It's going to be it's as the last few years we've been lucky, I guess. When the schools, we've been able, when it's only a school here and then maybe 3 or 4 years later another school, and we've been able to survive with growth and maintain those tax rates and still do what we need to do. However, some of that deferred maintenance has still continued to grow over those years, but also now the schools are not happening every year or every 4 or 5 years. They're happening every year or every other year, and it's multiple schools. It's not just one school. So that's what we're trying to tackle and trying to make sure that we can provide funding for. So we want to make sure we're bringing this to you so you see the whole picture as we go through this process.
And we still have that situation with the schools, the classroom size, it was a K through 3 that has not been resolved yet.
That's correct. So that's
that one's still
another
outstanding.
potential impact as well.
And also, if we can get the flexibility on the quarter-cent sales tax, that will help us some, I believe, won't it?
That will,
It would
I don't think there's
possibly
any
drive-
possible way to make it
Happen this year.
for next budget year. It may be the following year, so
Yeah.
that we can get it done, so.
Because that could generate 5 or 6 million, I think.
About 7
Susan said.
million.
7
See, that
million,
would
yeah.
more than cover this, maybe next year or the year after, but not doing any good for us now, though.
Yeah, just for everybody's purposes, that the state will allow Cabarrus County an additional quarter-cent sales tax by referendum. We would still have to hold the referendum. However, that quarter cents right now can only be used for transportation issues or cost. So what our board and many other counties are asking for a flexibility in that quarter cent to not just be restricted to transportation projects, to be used at either for school and transportation, or just the flexibility of the needs of that particular jurisdiction.
I think as we met with our local General Assembly delegation, I believe they all indicated support for that. So if that were to pass in the General Assembly, the earliest we could hold a referendum would it be possible this year or in November?
It depends on when they pass it and make it effective, but we may be able to do it by November. If not, it would be next year.
Right.
Does it have to be on a county election year?
That's what they're trying to figure out. I don't know what the language says right now, so, yeah.
That's one that we benefit greatly from because of the large volume of people from other counties that come to Cabarrus County to shop, Concord Mills and other places. So that could be extremely helpful to us without costing our citizens very much.
And one other thing too, Mr. Chairman, that I guess we should talk about just for a minute or two, and that is the lottery funds, because that always comes into play. People's always saying, what about the lottery? It's supposed to build schools and all. And we had a good history lesson on that whenever we were talking about it the last time, where it was supposed to be, for the North Carolina Education Lottery, we were supposed to get 50% for schools. But somehow during the night, before it passed, it got reduced from 50% to 40%, and now it's down to about 15, 16, 17%. And one of the goals that the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has is to try to reinstate that lottery money back into the school, which was what its original intent was. So I just want the people of Cabarrus County and everyone here know that we're aware of these issues, and we're pushing these issues to generate revenue that's supposed to be coming to our county from legislation that was done in years that they have gradually taken away. And we're
Right.
trying to get it back to relieve the burden of our local taxpayers of having the potential property tax increase, and by having the quarter cent, if we can get that flexibility, then all, like Chairman Morris said, then all the people that come into our county for whatever reason, the mall, the races, or whatever, they'll be helping us provide for them our amenities that we provide in Cabarrus County.
Exactly. And on that lottery fund, the percentage is low, as you mentioned, but it's also capped. So as the lottery grows, the funding does not. They use those additional funds for other purposes.
See, we're currently using what we get. I think you guys budget $2 million a year, and we budget that to pay the debt service for the schools that we've already built. That helps us pay for that. But like you said, they cap it at $100 million, and that's for all 100 counties, and we get a portion of it, and that portion seems to be declining. And there was a comment made, I forget which one of the representatives made it, but they were talking about most of the people who says, well, you need to quit spending so much money advertising and marketing the lottery. We see all these TV ads and everything, and put it back into to education instead of putting it everywhere else. And the answer for that was, well, we tried that, but the lottery ticket sales declined. So we had to continue the marketing to keep the ticket sales going. That's just what we were told.
Right. Well, and hats off to Kevin Leonard from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. Did give us an extremely good lesson on the history of school funding at our summit meeting, along with all of our municipalities a couple weeks ago. I think everyone found that to be very interesting, and I think the general public as well we just don't talk about those ratios and facts and figures often enough, I believe, so that people know exactly where the money comes from and doesn't come from. So it's either we do one of those things or we figure out what kind of bake sale to have to make up this difference.
Yeah. And again, as we get closer, we'll be coming back to you again. But for sure, at the end of May, when you have your budget work sessions, we'll be getting into more detail. But we're going to continue as a staff to continue to try to figure out options of moving things around. We think we've done a pretty good job of that now, and then it's just a matter of what do you want to push off to future years to be able to balance this year, or do you want to provide the revenue? So hopefully this was helpful. We didn't want to wait till the end of May to do this. We want to get you a snapshot now. And if you guys, even after tonight, please send us your comments. If you want to give us some directions on anything that you see that's in here that you feel is appropriate or not appropriate to include, at least for next year's budget, and then we'll make those changes and rerun the numbers for you as well. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, discussion items for action at our April 18th meeting. And we have Carol Souls and David Black from the Board of Elections here to talk about DS200 scanners, which we know nothing about, and I'm sure you know everything about.
You actually do, because we have used them at early voting.
Okay.
So our board would like to request purchasing in this fiscal year these scanners, which are a replacement for the M100 scanners that we currently have. It's an upgrade with newer technology. We breathed a big sigh of relief on election night because the problems that happened in Durham, we have that same equipment. And we didn't know about the failure that could happen in the batteries. Well, it's the cards that hold the information. There's an internal battery that can fail that cannot be replaced. If it fails, the information's gone. And that's one thing that happened in Durham. And we had the same equipment. So we just breathed a big sigh of relief when we got through it and that did not happen. This is the same vendor. It's just an upgrade of what we have now. It's a vendor in North Carolina in New Bern. It uses a USB drive rather than these cards, so it is a newer technology. The equipment we have is 10 years old. And like I said, the failure of the technology has been a concern. This is the only tabulator that is currently certified in North Carolina. There have been other vendors. The board had looked in previous years because the State Board of Elections said they were going to certify some other vendors. That has not happened as of yet. They're in the process, but this vendor has been proven to us as far as maintenance, and they're always there. They just stopped by on Election Day, and they are in New Bern. And they have been, they've been the vendor for all 100 counties. That's been the only vendor that has been certified. It will still be paper ballots. Like I said, this is just an upgrade of the one we have now. So as far as the voting public, it won't make that big of a difference to them. They will not have a lot of education needed for that. We wanted to get it in this fiscal year so that we could go ahead and start educating the precinct officials before November's election.
The other plus to this is they had $5,775 left over from old election equipment money. So we scavenged that. They had $200,000 left over in their election line item after the elections were over with because they didn't have to have as many elections. So we scavenged that money. We were able to remove this item from the capital reserve list to free up money for other projects and take some of the Medicaid hold harmless money to finish this off to get them the complete amount they needed. And they got $65,000 for trading in their old DS100 equipment. So I just want to let you know the financial side of the benefit of doing it right now was the trade-in, the money they had in their current year budget to go ahead and purchase it so it wouldn't affect next year's budget, the little bit of money they had left over from their equipment line item, and some money we had from Medicaid hold harmless to finish it off so they could go ahead and complete the project.
And actually, we were at a conference that Print-Elect held 2 weeks ago, I think, and they said that these trade-in amounts would be lessening as more DS200s and they receive in more M100s, the trade-in amount will be lessening. So I've got this quote in hand, and they will be held to that.
So will this replace the entire fleet? Yes, they'll all be upgraded.
Correct.
I've had people question, particularly in the last election, they would question the process of choosing the equipment and the reliability of it. And, you know, we all saw some of the videos around on the internet, and some were probably fabricated and others perhaps not. But what I'm hearing you say is we don't have a choice.
Currently, we don't. This is the only equipment that is certified by the North Carolina State Board of Elections.
Right.
And there will be certifying some others, but like I said, this vendor we have dealt with, we know them,
Right.
they're reliable, they show up whenever they come do maintenance every year, preventative maintenance on the equipment.
And how long have you been waiting for the other vendors to be certified? It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Well, and it's the state dragging its feet.
Right, but I'm just saying that it's not like she's walking away because somebody else is going to approve tomorrow. It's been
All right, 2 years
at least 2 years since I remember them showing this and talking about how they were going to certify some other equipment. It's just not happened.
Right.
Well, I mean, we've even had vendors come at some of the conferences to show their equipment and walk away from it knowing that we couldn't buy it even if we wanted to because it's not certified. And the state is going through a streamlining process now to try to get some of the certifications done in a more timely fashion, changing some of the requirements. But it still takes time. And one of the nice things about I think about the new DS200 is that she mentioned using the USB card. In the public, there's a perception out there that elections can be hijacked by people coming in and stealing the information from the computers. First off, the system that the state of North Carolina uses is a closed system. What that means is that, you know, this information that we send goes to a system in Raleigh that cannot be hijacked because it's a closed system. But one of the things that the DS200s are going to be able to do, I think, too, is with the new card that they have in there, that's a proprietary information. You just can't go buy one of those cards at Office Max, if you need one. Is something that is an improvement over what they had because of the possibility of failure that could have epic problems if the failures occurred, and this is a way to get away from that. And so we think it's a good move. Plus, one of the things that I noticed at the conference too with the DS200 is that they are trying to incorporate the ability for the DS200 to have a little more flexibility in the future when they come up with different technologies for voting procedures. Even though those would have to still be approved, everybody's always looking at new ways to improve the voting process for the voter to make it faster and more efficient. And so, by getting these DS200s, that's going to help us move in that direction.
So have you, in your spare time, ever gone through and looked at an election and say, if this precinct, if something horrible happened and you lost all the information from this entire precinct, and of course everybody's gone home by then before you find out, how many elections it would change or the results it would change?
Well, that's the good thing about
there's so
using
many-
paper ballots, though.
Yeah, so you got that backup of the paper ballot.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's
When we do
good.
a recount,
Right.
we take the actual paper ballots and put them back in. And by 2019, every county has to go back to paper.
Okay,
I know Mecklenburg right now uses the touchscreen, but they won't be able to do that in 2019.
Okay.
By 2019, they're going to have to do
so
paper.
there's you could never lose an entire precinct. 'cause
If we
you'd
had
have
to, we could have people in there and look at the
paper
ballot and
backup.
hand
Yeah.
tally.
Right, right.
If we
And
had
so
to.
what happened in
We could call all of
Durham?
y'all to come help.
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened in Durham? They had the same thing, but it just took a long time to do it.
What happened was the PCMCIA card, which is,
Right.
right now, that holds the information from the election.
Mhm.
And on election night, each precinct brings theirs back in, and we load it to our computer.
Right,
Theirs would not read.
okay. And so they had to go back and rescan every ballot?
Well, what they did was, each machine also has a tape, so they
Right.
just took the information on the tape and hand
Uh-huh.
entered it
Right.
into the computer.
I see. Okay, interesting. Other
Always
questions?
backups.
So, what's that on your shirt, Dave?
Yes.
It's a prayer for tonight.
A prayer for tonight?
I have
think
personally,
Simon's right. I think
I have
it's-
personally
yeah.
manually reconciled one election. It is not fun.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Yeah,
It can be done.
it is not fun.
Right.
Well, anytime you can get 10 years out of technology, you've done really pretty doggone good.
Right.
So we've been really very, very fortunate to not have any issues. And so I think with the trade-in allowance that we're getting, probably be at its highest now, the longevity of what we got being 10 years,
One stop.
it's time to make this move.
Right.
And we do have preventative maintenance every year. Those machines are tested and cleaned out, every time, and I think that's held. And David just brought up, we had, there's a sample count that occurs 2 days after the election, where the state randomly picks 2 precincts, and we have to hand to our count every ballot. We have a team, 2 people, 2 that call out and 2 that hand tally. And our precinct, one that was randomly picked, was the Harrisburg early voting site. And it took 7.5 hours. And it came out, I think, two votes different than it did Election Day, which we thought was excellent.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have from Finance, Establishment of Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund and Local Government Law Enforcement Special Separation Allowance Trust Fund. And I'm sure
a mouthful.
Susan is going to tell us what that means.
It's a mouthful, right? So currently, for our OPEB, which is our other post-employment benefits, we have health insurance funds that we will pay for our retirees who qualify. And we're on a pay-as-you-go system. So each year, we're paying around $1 million, a little more, for the health insurance for the retirees. Well, if we have a study done once every other year by an actuary, and we have an unfunded amount of $29 million. So, which is scary. So if everything lined up, everybody retired, and we had to pay everything out today, we'd owe $29 million, which is probably not going to happen, but that we have to report that in our financial statements, that we have an unfunded it's actually 29.6 at June of last year. The state has been encouraging counties and cities to set up a trust fund with the Local Government Commission, and what it is irrevocable. So you put your money there, and it's just being good stewards, knowing that we are setting aside that money and we can't touch it if we have a shortfall in our budget or something comes up, or a rainy day. It's not a rainy day fund, but we are setting that money aside for those benefits, and we're contributing to it. And you can set one up for $100,000. Well, what we'd like to do is put $1 million over there. This is being accounted for in our self-insurance fund, which is separate from the general fund. And our premiums from our health insurance go into that fund. We pay out our expenses, and we keep a 20% reserve. And currently, we would be able to transfer comfortably $1 million to start this fund up. It also looks good for when our rating agencies come in, which we'll have to do pretty soon when we issue debt. They'll come in and then they'll ask about our unfunded pension, unfunded OPEB liability. And for us to be able to say we have set this aside, that we're being transparent, that we're making an attempt to fund this huge liability, speaks volumes for Cabarrus County. The local government commission has also recommended this to us for a county of our size. We have spoken with City of Concord. They have one established already, and several other people do too, but we've specifically spoken with them. What this would involve is I've already spoken with the employees from the state, and we would have to set up a, what they call a STIF account, which is relatively is safe. We have some options where we can invest our money out in different, more risky alternatives, but right now I would suggest we're doing them with the basic till we get comfortable with everything. But what it would matter, it would be setting up a trust, which we would have participants in it. Maybe, I think 3 people would be on our trust board. We had to meet annually. And so it could be something as simple as myself, the county manager, and the clerk. And we would like to meet once a year, just to have, so we have minutes. And just deposit the funds with them. We get monthly statements with them and showing our interest income, and we would be able to report it on our financial statements in a separate trust fund and show to everyone, here we're accounting for everything. Not that we're not accounting for it now, but we're just a pay-as-you-go system. So that's the OPEB trust fund. So do we have questions on the OPEB trust fund before I switch gears?
What are your thoughts on the future regular deposits? I mean, when you mention in here, and then deposit regular contributions and orders, I assume you're going to try to grow that? I mean, but have y'all talked
Yes.
about what and how, or?
Well, like, so currently, and Pam, jump in if you need to, currently we have like a 20% reserve and that, and so really we could put more into it right now, but I just wanted to get it established. But as of our future years, if we have better years and we don't have so many claims, then if we have excess, then we might want to consider making a larger contribution. But if we have a really bad year, then we might not want to be, I don't want to go out on a limb and say we're going to put $500,000 in each year, and then we have a really bad claim year, and we're strapped and we don't need to. We can't put in that much money, and then we don't want to go and rely on other sources to be able to fund that trust. So we can just let it sit there, but that's not the intent.
Yeah, I think our intent when we were looking over everything is that $1 million would be the best way to start because we have those excess reserves. But because of all the changes we made to our health insurance plan this year, we don't know what it's going to look like, so we don't have history to go back on. And once we go through a year, I would say at least $100,000 a year, because you're already paying out between $700,000 and $1 million for the actual claims each year. And if you're showing progress that you're putting money into it, at a minimum at least $100,000, but we're just watching to see how the reserves are looking in that fund and what it looks like. We would just kind of go from there. But it would feel good to go through another year to see what it's like when the transition to the HSA for the new employees and the change in the benefits and what are the claims going to look like. And is the 20% pretty steady? And it's looking like it is pretty steady, and we might be able to put a little bit more in there. But Susan and I were at the finance conference, and we asked the director over the financial section of the LGC, do you want us to have one, do you not? And she said, absolutely, because you're issuing a lot of debt, and it makes a difference in the rating agencies, showing that we're actually setting that money aside. We've always had that money set aside, but we just didn't get credit for it. And you can draft money out of there twice a year.
Actually, they said once a month.
Once a month.
Once
Okay,
a month
so you
that we
can't,
need to.
if you needed to get money to pay those retiree benefits, you can get it back, but you have to get it back just for that specific purpose.
Other questions on that one? Okay, so the second one was the law enforcement special separation allowance. And up until FY16, we've always kept that in a separate fund in our financial statements. And we do fund that one. We have an actuarial study done once a year, and we do fund the amount that we pay for the retirees that qualify for the special separation allowance. This past year, they had some GASB changes, which is Government Accounting Standards Board changes, and we had to pull that back in and put it into our general fund. And it's because we did not have a trust set up, a formal trust. We called it a trust on our books, but we did not have a trust at a financial trust outside of the county. So what I'm proposing to do is to start the trust for the special separation allowance and fund it each year based on that actuarial study. Right now, it's sitting in committed fund balance. So at June 30th, it's in our fund balance, but it's not sitting outside the county in a different fund. It's commingled with our funds, although we know how much it is. We would never, it's committed, so we wouldn't give it up. But again, for transparency, for the rating agencies to be able to do this. Now, when I contacted the state, I said, can you tell me who someone else, another county that has a special separation allowance set up with you? Well, there's not one. So they're encouraging us to do it, but Guilford County is in the process of doing it. So we've made contact with Guilford County, and we're going to try and borrow some of their ideas and stuff too, what they're, how they're getting it set up, just like we have borrowed ideas from City Concord and some of their resolutions that they have established for their OPEB. So at this time, we'd like to go ahead and do that because that money, we would like to set that aside. And like I said, be accountable, transparency, that looks good for our rating agencies. I'm trying to think of any, it's tracking, and like Pam said, it's highly recommended by the LGC for us to do this. The next step, should you agree to let me go ahead and establish these two trust funds, would be to get the paperwork from the state, from the LGC. I would bring back to you resolutions that would need to be approved, but just starting that process, if you would allow me to do that, then we would check into it further. And like I said, we establish a trust board, have our resolutions in place. It said it takes about 90 days to get, allow 90 days to get one started. And I, definitely wouldn't start one before June 30th. We would like to try and start it on July 1st, if possible. If not, later on in the year. There are separate accounting standards and rules that we have to follow if we have a trust, a true trust, versus in our county books. So no big deal, but we just need to choose one way or the other to proceed, how we're going to proceed on with this.
I think it's a great improvement myself. It'd be no different than an average homeowner having a checking and a savings account, and all their money's in their checking account, and they're not using it, so they need to take it out and put it in their savings account, which is what you're basically doing in a much, much huger way. Obviously, we're talking millions versus thousands
Correct.
maybe, but it's the same principle though, so it's good, and it's a systematic thing also. They're protected funds. They're not new funds. You already have them. So you just move them from a big pot to a smaller little pots that are still protected.
At June 30th of 16, we had $1.5 million in our special separation allowance committed fund balance for that amount. So,
Okay, additional questions?
I think it's the smart and responsible thing to do from what I hear.
Okay, well, I think Susan has the next item, also 4.4.
Make sure I get in the right order here. Okay, this first one's the reimbursement to reimburse ourselves. Last month, I brought before you the same paperwork to reimburse ourselves for the warehouse project. This time, I'm bringing to you the Performance Learning Center and the new high school. And this is just to set in place a mechanism where we can go ahead and pay some of the bills that come due before our debt proceeds are received. And we're anticipating issuing debt in the fall. However, they need to break ground in August for the, actually for the high school. They need to break ground in high school in August. So it would be just a couple months there where the county would pay the bills, but then as soon as the debt proceeds are received, then we'd reimburse ourselves. And for the agenda item that's attached today, I spoke with you earlier about the increase in the price for the high school. So the resolution that is attached in your minutes today or your agenda today will be replaced with the higher numbers before the April 18th board meeting, because we do need to make sure those two are, that amount has been increased for the high school, just to safeguard ourselves. For example, on this extract from the minutes, it has $65,210,000. I'm going to be taking it up to $110,585,000, and that's right above letter E there. At the end of D, right there. The 65 million. I wish it was thousand. 65 million will be taken to 110 million before the April 18th.
In the high school, just 100 million?
And the high school portion is 100 million
Okay.
of that. Okay. Is there questions about the reimbursement resolution? It's standard procedure. Like I said, there's certain steps we had to go in order and for this debt financing. So that's one of the steps. Okay. The next related item is also debt related, and this is the installment contract and financing. And this will cover all four of the projects, and it's just setting in motion. And right again, the agenda item says 82 million. I'm going to be taking that up to 128,105,000, based on the conversation that I spoke with you earlier about the new high school increasing the value. So before the April 18th meeting, this will be replaced. I'll get with Megan and replace this amount and the backup with it. Questions? I know Hurdley went through it earlier about the four different projects. questions of the projects or?
The question I have
Okay.
popped up, we're saying 110 million is what we're going to be raising it up to, but this number will be 128. What's
Yes.
the difference?
Okay. We have to do something called a not to exceed amount. And what that does is and I'm not, without getting too much into it, if we have to issue the debt at a discount, okay, we're going to have to borrow more money to be able to get the proceeds that we need for the construction contracts, okay? So when our underwriter ran the numbers, he did it at a discount. Now, we have issued at a premium for the past, 5 or 6 issues, we've had a premium. But we have to take into consideration that not to exceed the worst-case scenario. So with that being said, to be able to get to our numbers that we need for the high school, it's going to be like 106 million in that not to exceed number. This is just getting up to the 128. And then we have 13.2 million for our parking deck, 4.2 million for our PLC and our warehouse. And that gets us to the 128, 105. That's the worst-case scenario. And like I said, I'll keep reminding y'all, too, that we're never going to borrow money more than we need because we don't want to pay the debt service on it for 20 years or 7 years or however long each of the items would be. So that's what, when we're throwing out numbers, I know it does get confusing when I say 100 million, then I'd say 106 million, or I say 57 million. But thank goodness for our underwriters because they're keeping us straight on the different scenarios. But that is the 128 million is our worst-case scenario. If we have to issue at a discount, if the market just goes crazy, we have to issue at a discount, that would be the amount that would be on your bond documents, and it would say the $128 million.
What did you say was the parking deck again, which 14?
It's the not to exceed number
Right,
is
not to.
13.2, but what I need for it is 12.5.
Okay.
So to be able to get to that 12.5 at a discount, we'd have to say that our par amount, yes, 13.
So when you throw in, if we have to do the premium deal, when you throw the premium in and the interest, that really puts it about, you get $1 to pay back $2. Is that right? If that would be the case, somewhere thereabouts.
The premium, if we issued at a premium, then the $128 million, the par amount would go down and our premium would go up to still get me to the net of what I need. I know it's just counterintuitive. It is, but the worst, like I said, the worst case scenario, you don't want to issue at the discount because that's gonna rise. The interest rates and everything are gonna go up, so that's gonna so.
We on the same page. It's just, I think, yeah, we're on the same page.
But I always have the bond attorney and our underwriter reviewing numbers, and they're talking back and forth and stuff and getting the proper numbers for us to be able to issue the lowest amount of money to still get us for the amount of funds we need for our commitments.
And both of them, both of those attorneys have been with us through many cycles
Yes.
of debt, so we're very
We
comfortable
trust
with it.
them.
And the lowest interest rate, that's also part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they'll play with the numbers. I don't know if you noticed that we took it, the PLC and stuff from 5 years to 7 years. That's back when we were trying to balance the budget. We don't want to take it out 20 years, but we can go from 5 to 7 and see what a difference that makes on our debt service. And we will constantly be, what time of year do we want to issue the debt? Is that going to make us have just an interest payment the first year? Or is it going to make us have an interest and a principal payment? And we can push that out a year. But all in keeping in mind, we have that 5-year plan. It catches up with us. We got to, which year can stand the principal payment? So it's a game.
Well, you've done an excellent job in explaining it, you and Kristen both, on the other plan, breaking it down, showing us how much would be anticipated in paying and all of that. And I don't know about the rest of it, but, everybody, but it helps me understand it better.
Good.
Okay, any more questions for Susan? Thank you very much. Okay, next item on our agenda is 4.6, and this was one of the items that was added. And this is from Tax Administration, resolution opposing Senate Bill 363. And Eddie is going to explain a bit of that to us.
Well, Senate Bill 363 modifies the Machinery Act, and under 105.322, under C, it inserts the part that if the evidence presented by the appellant includes an appraisal by a certified general real estate appraiser as defined under GS 93E1-4, the board shall modify the appraisal appealed to the value provided in the appraisal and ensure the appraisal is included in the record of any subsequent appeal. And then if it goes to the Property Tax Commission, I'll just summarize it, but that that appraisal is presented, then the county appraiser presents a certified general, and then the two parties agree to pick another appraisal, and then they average the results. And I've never seen a bill that created so much, it got everyone on our level stirred up, and our president reminded us that when we comment on P-tax, that it is a public forum, and be careful what you say. So the resolution that's already out there is, it just says that they're opposed to it because of, it strips the Board of Equalization review of making informed decisions about assessed value. And then it removes the ability for the Property Tax Commission, local boards to ensure that similar properties are appraised in similar manner, thereby promoting inequality among property values. And essentially, we've got informed citizens that serve on a Board of Equalization review, and somebody walks in with an appraiser by a certified general. It doesn't say where they're from, it just says they're certified general, and that's the law, that's the value. And what we have seems to be working pretty good right now, so. And
it would also devalue all the work that your department does in its mass appraisal procedure.
Right.
Treats it
Yeah.
like it doesn't have any meaning.
Yeah.
Because then you can bring in a certified general appraiser whose value is taken to be the true value unless it's appealed to the Property Tax Commission. It'd be a disaster.
Joanna Reese is already, they're going to meet with the bill sponsors next week, but we just thought it'd be more proactive to go ahead and get this resolution out here and let our position be known. So.
Right, okay. Questions for Eddie? I think you are requesting that we suspend the rules and adopt this resolution tonight, if possible.
I think that would be good.
You all have the resolution before you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Thank you.
The resolution is rather lengthy, but I think I shall go ahead and read it so that it'll be on the record and the folks watching on television can hear it. A resolution opposing modifications to the Machinery Act is outlined in S 363, an act to modify appeals of property tax valuation where the appeal involves certain appraisals. Whereas the Machinery Act is the official title given to Subchapter 2 of Chapter 105 of the North Carolina General Statutes, governs the entire administrative structure of the property tax system used by counties and municipalities in North Carolina, and whereas Senate Bill 363, filed on March 22nd, 2017, removes the authority of the local boards of equalization and review and the Property Tax Commission to make reasoned, informed decisions regarding the assessed values of properties. And whereas the bill removes the ability for both the Property Tax Commission and the local boards of equalization and review to ensure that similar properties are appraised in a similar manner, thereby promoting inequality amongst property values. And whereas by promoting inequality amongst properties, the bill would create inequity among property owners through inequitable tax bills for similar properties. And whereas the bill appears to presume that a county can appeal the decision of the local board of equalization and review to the state commission although the statutory appeal rights are available only to the appealing property owners and not to the county. And whereas S-363 fails to recognize that appraisal options are almost always reflective of a range of values that are sometimes higher and sometimes lower than typical values, whereas S-363 fails to recognize that the purpose for which an appraisal is conducted can have significant impact on where the final value falls within a given range. And whereas, because the bill would require adopting the value expressed in the appraisal, it is certain that neighboring and similar properties would become appraised at different levels, and whereas the bill does not provide discretion from local or state oversight boards to evaluate the quality of the submitted appraisal, and whereas counties must provide and bear the cost of hiring mutually agreed upon appraisers if the county has an exception to order, and whereas regarding county exceptions and appeals to the Property Tax Commission, S-363 directs the Property Tax Commission to modify the appealed appraisal to the average value provided, and whereas S-363 represents a dangerous departure from a procedure that has historically offered due process and equal protection for taxpayers statewide. Now therefore be it resolved that the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners opposes Senate Bill 363 and hereby requests their local delegation to the North Carolina General Assembly join them in opposition to this bill. So at this time I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a proclamation declaring Fair Housing Month. Commissioner Honeycutt, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I ask that this be added since it's the month of April, and I just found out about it last Thursday or Friday, so I ask that it get added onto this for your consideration.
Okay, and I will read this proclamation as well. Thank goodness it's significantly shorter than the last one. Whereas April 11th, 2017 marks the 49th anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Acts of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, religion, sex, familial status, handicap, and national origin, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all. And whereas the Central Carolina Association of Realtors is committed to highlight the Fair Housing Act by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to plan partnership efforts with other organizations to help assure everyone of their right to fair housing. And whereas the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics commits all realtors to providing equal professional services without discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, handicap, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin, and now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Commissioners for Cabarrus County, North Carolina, do hereby resolve that April 2017, being Fair Housing Month, begins a year-long commemoration of the Fair Housing Act in Cabarrus County, and urge all citizens to wholeheartedly recognize this celebration throughout the year.
So do we need another motion to suspend the rules?
Yes, ma'am.
I will make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And what's your pleasure on the proclamation? Okay, we have a motion to approve the proclamation commemorating the Fair Housing Act. Do I hear a second? Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to the approval of our regular meeting agenda, which you all have included in your packet. And in our discussion, I don't think we have suggested items to add or change.
Well, that, need to add
That
Susan's item.
3.2, yeah. What,
We'll need to add,
do we need, the
need to add-
3.2 on the, add additions, is that what we need to
yeah,
add?
we
or
need
is
to
that?
add Susan's.
Susan's
Yeah.
item will show up as an addition on your
Okay.
regular meeting agenda,
So-
since we don't have that information at this time.
Right. That's it. Everything else is good.
Okay. All right, we have a motion that the agenda be approved as presented. And a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and I am happy to announce that we do not have need of a closed session tonight. So with plenty of time before the basketball game, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn. Okay, we have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. And that motion passes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.